Hello and welcome to episode 36 of Creative Dynamos. Today's guest is Brian Rathbone. Brian, you and I have been following each other on social media for a long time. Have we actually ever met in person? I can't
No, we've
remember.
just talked.
Okay. So Brian, you're a fantasy author, self-published. And before we get into the meat of the issue, tell us a little bit about your writing journey, how long you've been doing it, and what kind of brought you to that place where you started writing.
I've had an interesting journey to get here. I actually started out as a professional horse trainer on the family farm with 4 generations of family, and that kind of applies to the writing journey as we go a little farther into the tale. But I've also been in technology for the past 35 years. And right around 10 years into my technology career, I was writing a lot of code. I was working second shift. I've always loved to read. Fantasy fiction was my go-to. It was the only thing I could find that really made me feel like my life on the farm. Like when I found fantasy, it was like, I'm home, I found it. And so I got to this point where I was working night shift, I'm writing code, and I would think code all night while I was sleeping. I would debug code in my sleep, sometimes successfully, but always exhausting. And half the time
Yes.
I was writing code that I'd already finished. Right. So it was a wasted thing. It was not functional very much at all. And I would wake up exhausted and wasn't feeling good. And since I knew I had always wanted to write my own books, I thought, you know what, maybe when I'm getting ready for bed, instead of thinking about what I worked on all day, I should think about the stories I want to write and the characters
Hmm.
and the plot line. So I did that for 15 years before I ever wrote a single word. Every night I was kind of grinding it into my head. And when I got a severance package, I was laid off from my position at learningstation.com back in 2005. I was like, and I got a little bit of time. I got a little bit of severance package. I should write that book. And so I wrote the first one. And boy, that was the toughest one. Man, that was hard. Not my best work either, but it's a learning experience. And I know some of my friends in the industry who wrote 10 books before they ever published one. I couldn't do that. It's
Hmm.
not my personality. I also don't do anything small, right? My first book I wrote was the first book in what became, a 14 book epic. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend starting on the first book of an epic as your first novel, but that's a lot of the things when people ask me, how did you do it? I'm like, I'm going to tell you right now. When I tell you how I did it, that's not what I'm recommending you do because it was a long, arduous journey. And originally, I wanted to be traditionally published. I think most authors, when they dream about that, want that traditional publishing deal. But really, I represented a pretty poor business case for publishers when I first finished. I finished the first trilogy. I had it professionally edited, worked my tail off on it, thought I was ready to go get an agent and get a publisher. I was not. And I think it was best that I did not get an agent or a publisher because knowing what I know about the business now, I didn't have a ready market waiting for that book. It was probably going to be set up for failure. Sure, the publisher could have pulled a rabbit out of a hat, or we could have hit that right thing where an unknown author got a hit. But my feeling on it is that was probably a long shot. Even though, it hurt my feelings. I cried. But, you put that much of yourself into something and have it fall flat on its face, it's going to sting. But the
Yes,
thing,
more than just a little bit.
just a little bit. But at the same time, you got to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, ask yourself why you did it. And I think that's one of the most important things that I would say for any writer. First off, understand why are you doing it? What do you want
Hmm.
to get out of it? Because that'll impact
Hmm.
your journey. If your goal solely is get people to read the story, traditional publishing might not be the best way to go. But if your goal is to be recognized by the industry and become a New York Times bestselling author, traditional publishing is absolutely the way to go. And so I've seen people be successful in both. Part of it comes down to the personality of those people. I wouldn't fit well in traditional publishing. I'm a bit too recalcitrant. And I probably would be a problem for the publisher. So knowing that, it is good. So, when I originally published the books in 2007, I did a print run. It was the dumbest thing I've ever done in the publishing industry. Spent a lot of money on a book I had no distribution for. And when I
Hmm.
tried to distribute it and realized I had to give a 55% discount and ship the books, I was $2 in the hole anytime I sold a book. I gave away most of those books. It was pretty depressing and I felt like a failure. And, I just about quit writing over it because, well, clearly I wasn't cut out for it. But the world changed and the Palm Pilot came out. People started reading.
I remember those days.
Yes, yes. And people started reading ebooks on Palm Pilots. And there was
Hmm.
this French company that came out called Moby Pocket. And it was like the first
I remember Moby Pocket.
Moby
Yep.
Pocket. So I got on the Moby Pocket. And that's when everything changed. The Dawning of Power became the best-selling epic fantasy on Moby Pocket for 18 months straight. Partially just because it did well with their algorithm, they made it visible. Once it started to sell, they pushed it out to people. But partially because I was starting to learn how to market a digital product.
Hmm.
And I would realize that if I sent a lot of traffic, I would go up the charts, it would get me more visibility, it would generate more sales, and it would snowball and do all these things.
Hmm.
So I was really happy with Moby Pocket right up until Amazon bought them to create the Kindle, which if you ever noticed that the old Kindle files were .mobi, that's why, because they were just Moby
Yep.
Pocket files. And originally, Amazon was pretty good for me. But in 2016, it's the reason I stopped publishing. The algorithm changed. I released 3 books that flopped, didn't make any money, where I was really expecting to have the kind of success I'd had previously. But it was right around the time Amazon changed their business model. They didn't like the free first in series model as much anymore. They wanted to push people to Kindle Unlimited. I was not as thrilled with that. So it really kind of put me in a bad spot. The good thing about it, those books have now done really well. It wasn't the books, it wasn't the content, it was the algorithm, the market, and the timing. That was a really big lesson for me because, when you do this, I know authors generally put their hearts out with their books. It's hurt really bad when it goes poorly. And I'm here to tell
Hmm.
you, I've had books that flopped for 5 years, find their audience, and now have thousands of reviews. Right. And then I have others that didn't. Right? It's not like, my books are the best ones ever and it just needed people to see them. And some of my books have not hit the market as well. I learned some lessons about cliffhangers and when to do a cliffhanger. And if you're going to do a cliffhanger, you better make sure you got the next book ready. That's my number one lesson
Yes.
on cliffhangers. Second lesson on cliffhangers is if you can, put a teaser at the end of the book that includes the resolution, some resolutions, so that readers don't feel like you're just trying to get cash out of them.
Yep.
So there's an art to the cliffhanger. It's a very useful tool, but you have to do it in a way that doesn't alienate readers. So that was a lot
Yes.
for your question, but here we are.
So one of the things, and you kind of hinted at this, like one of the things I tell people who are new to this journey is, like you said, define why you're in it and all of that. Also, you need to define what success means for you, because that's going to mean different things for different people. How do you define success for yourself? And yeah, what does that look like for you?
I had multiple levels. The first level is just share the story and have people like it, right? And when I
Hmm.
was in 2008 time frame when audiobooks was real popular and Scott Sigler and JC Hutchins and Nathan Lowell were just crushing it and some of them still crushing
Hmm.
it. Those guys do great work. I kind of saw what they were doing and I'm like, well, I could record podcast novels and put these out. It's the world's worst monetization strategy to put out free audio and not have something to sell behind it.
Hmm.
But nonetheless, that's what built my audience. And initially, that was success for me. I wanted an audience. I wanted people to connect with my writing the way I had connect with Dragonlance and
Yep.
The Lord of the Rings, and so many other great series that I read. I probably read 1,500 fantasy books over the years, and they all kind of mushed together to a certain extent. But I wanted that. But then once that passed, I wanted to get my money back. I didn't want to go in the hole financially. That helped me a good bit. But once we got past that, it was like, okay, I'd like to build a residual income that pays my bills, or at least parts of it. And my writing paid most of the mortgage for the better part of 15 years. That made me very happy. Times it was a
Yeah.
little lower, times it was a little more. depending on the algorithms and the promotional things, sometimes we did better than others. And it was really when I got into, I did the podcast novels. They built my audience. Like I said, terrible monetization, not the best narrator at that time. I've learned a lot. I've gotten better. I could probably narrate my books now and do okay selling them as commercial products, but the original product I did, no, that was not a for sale product. So I hired a narrator who was more skilled than me, Chris Snellgrove, and had him record the series. And those have done very well. And they're also a more profitable product. They cost more to make, but there's not as much
Yeah.
competition in that market. And if you can sell an audiobook at full price, you might make $10 to $15, where you might make 1 or 2 off of an ebook, depending on how you price it. So I found that market very gratifying to work in. But much like my ebook publishing, I try to go everywhere and not be beholden to any single retailer, because they will get in over their heads and decide you are the one who's supposed to be beholden to them. And I don't do well in that market. Again, recalcitrant.
Mhm.
I get in fights
Mhm.
with retailers. But at this point, so I'm wide distribution on everything: audiobooks, ebooks, paperback and hardcover to the extent that they're out there. Not that I make any money when you sell those, because it's hard to make money selling printed books. A lot easier to
Yes.
sell the digital products. And it's funny because
Yes.
if you ask a reader what do they want, well, they want a printed book. And they ask me, well, what do you want me to buy? I want you to buy the audiobook. Why? Because I make more money. Right? But I still want you to get the print book. I just want you to listen to the audiobook while you're reading it.
I'd love for you to buy it in all formats everywhere.
Buy it in
That would be
all
awesome.
formats. Get some for your friends. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of it for me, was to just get to the point that it was doing something positive in my life. And there were times I made really good money doing it and considered doing that as my full time vocation. I'd like to semi retire from the
Mhm.
technology world. I'm pretty stressed and I'm ready to go back to something that I just love.
Yeah.
And I haven't released a new book in 10 years. Now,
Really?
yeah, and a lot of people would look at it and go, well, geez, that's just suicide as a writer. But it taught me something. It taught me one of the differences between traditional publishing and self publishing. In traditional publishing, most of your success is going to be in the first 2 months. That's how they're going to
Mhm.
gauge the success of your book. And a lot of people will ask me in the self publishing world, what's your launch strategy? I put it out. I don't have a launch strategy because I don't focus on launch as the big thing. I focus on long term sales. And don't get me wrong, I like to do a good launch. I'd like to get better at it. I think that's one of the things I'm weakest at that I would like to improve over time. But for me, you can monetize your backlist over a long term. And if you learn how to get good with that, it will help you as you're bringing out new books, because those new books are going to feed back to it. But knowing how to work your backlist is probably one of the best skills you can have as a self publisher. It's harder to do as a traditional publisher or traditionally published author, because you don't have as much control over your books.
Yes.
So it's a trade off. And again, like I said, some of my traditionally published friends do way better than I do. So I'm in no way discounting that. It just didn't work for me. So for me, figure out how to work your backlist. And how do I do that? Well, I'm aggressive as all get out in my pricing strategies. I will do free first in series, free second in series. I'll have 6 free books in a 12-book series at any given time, and I keep flipping them around. And you think, well, why do you
Mhm.
do that? Why don't you just leave it as that one's free forever? And I did that with Call of the Herald, and it gets lots of downloads. The algorithms like it when you change your prices.
Mhm.
That's been one of my lessons.
Okay.
If you go in and you change your prices every month, and I rotate, I'll go from free to full price. And that
Mhm.
product that was full price, it goes. And so now I have it set up. I have enough content that every month or so I can make some books paid and some books free. At which point I call it tickling the algorithms. You don't want to beat them over the head, they'll get mad. But if you just tickle them a
No.
little bit, they'll show your books to people. And I find Google Play very, very effective at this. It's actually my
Okay.
best market.
Huh.
I had a fight with some other retailers and decided I wasn't going to focus on them anymore. And that was another lesson I learned, right? Figure out which retailer works best for you.
Mhm.
Drive your traffic there. If you're selling books on Google Play and the first link on your website goes to Amazon, you've made a mistake. I know
Hmm.
Amazon's 80% of the market, but I'm a little fish in a big pond over here, and that's only, 5% of the market. But if you get a bigger chunk of that 5%, it can be as effective as the people who are really good at getting to the top of Kindle Unlimited and using Amazon ads and things. That was one of the things that kind of turned me off. I don't like to have to pay the retailer that's paying me. I didn't like that as much. And when it started to get to the point that that was kind of one of the only ways to get to the top and to give them exclusivity, that didn't work for me. So I went wide. Google is the type of retailer that if you get enough traffic on it and you raise your profile, it'll tend to stay there. Whereas,
Okay.
the promotions that we always used to run over the years, your book bubs, your free booksies, your those, back when they first started, they'd have a 3 month tail. You'd get a big spike and then you'd sell that spike out for a long tail. Well, that tail's now maybe 2 days, 3 days. It's been artificially shortened, has been my perception of it. So you really kind of have to figure out where can you get the retailer to promote you. That's
Hmm.
the best way to do it. If you can get the retailer to say, these books make us money, let's get more people to buy them, you've won. It's hard to do, but that to me has been the biggest success, is getting a retailer to just consistently promote my books for me, and then I don't have to do as much. And it's definitely cheaper.
Nice. So you have a big sprawling series. Give us a thumbnail sketch of what that's all about.
A long time ago, I was wondering about all the stories from our ancient history, gods and goddesses and magical powers and things along those lines. And I wondered, how did it happen then? But it doesn't seem like any of this is happening now.
Hmm.
Right? Like, was there something then? So I started thinking about, well, what could cause this period, this age of power and magic? Oh well, something in the sky, a comet that could radiate some sort of energy that impacts the atmosphere of this planet and causes something to happen. But you'd probably need more than one. And
Hmm.
I find astrophysics and that kind of stuff interesting anyway. And I had this thought one day. I'm like, what would happen if a large body wandered close to the Oort cloud and just dragged this massive chain of ice out of the Oort cloud and sent it hurtling through space on an elliptical orbit, so that every 3,000 years there'd be a storm of comets? And that storm of comets is a long enough period of time that had been going that everybody either forgot about it or thought it was just a legend. But when it returns, nobody's ready. And that's the entire premise for the World of Godsland series, from the overall, magic system, that type. But then it also came down to a strong female character who had a strong desire for peace, but who was in a position where that was the least likely thing to happen, because
Hmm.
the legends basically say there would be a destroyer, and she was the first one to trigger the power and be marked, oh, it's her. And so her trying to get past the stigma of ancient prophecy and things that people believe that she's going to do that she has no intention of doing is the main crux of the early parts of the book, or of the series, I should say. But 12 books, it takes quite a few different arcs through those 12 books now, and that's part of the interesting thing for me. Is it started as one thing and it grew. I mean, it started as a 6 book series.
Hmm.
It's 12. It's not technically not over yet. I've got more to write. I just need a year to write the next trilogy, because I refuse to do it part time, because I have learned when I write full time, I write better. And
Hmm.
the end of that series deserves my very best.
Okay. So you've also got a kids book series I saw.
Yeah, that's kind of a funny story how that happened. That was totally
Uh,
unintentional, by the way.
Okay, how did that happen?
So I had one of my illustrators that had done some cover art for me and said, "Hey, I'm kind of interested in doing some children's books. Could I do one in, using your world?" Well, yeah, that's pretty cool. What's the worst that could happen? And so we put it out, and it didn't sell a lot, but it was right before Amazon released the kids Kindle. And
Mm.
they contacted me and said, "Hey, you got this children's book. We need a whole bunch of them. Will you make more?" And I said, "Okay." So I contacted every illustrator and every children's book writer I knew. I went overboard. I shouldn't have. The thing flopped and it did not work well in the end. And I'll tell you the other funny story. The most popular children's book that I have is called The Silliest Dragon. It's maybe 12 pages. It is a baby's book, it is a bedtime story. I wrote that when I was so angry, so livid, that I just quit a job. I quit working for the state of North Carolina. I was at the broadband office and some things I didn't like were going down at the time. This back in 2014. Well, it had nothing to do with my colleagues at the broadband office. I love them. They're wonderful. So not besmirching them at all. But the way that everything was kind of going, I wasn't happy with. And somebody really ticked me off. And I drove home and I was furious. And I remember I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? It's the oddest way to sit down and go, I'm going to write a children's book. That's a happy little story about a dragon that loves you. But that's how it happened, oddly enough. And I just cranked it out, worked with an illustrator friend of mine. It's popular in the United States, but my goodness, they love that book in India. Couldn't tell you why, but it hits a certain thing in India and they like it.
Okay.
That's the
And
other
see,
that I've learned
that's the beautiful thing.
where your books are going to sell.
And that's the beautiful thing about, being in this kind of, self-publishing
Yeah,
zone. You get to decide where to push things, and you can see where things are selling, and you can alter your strategy. And
agreed.
yeah.
Agreed. Tell
um,
you an interesting story in that regard. I started, oh, it was probably 10 years ago. I started hearing from French speaking people on the Ivory Coast of South Africa, started contacting me on Facebook and wanting to know if I would talk with them and help them learn English. Well, eventually I figured out, well, they told me that they were learning English in school and they were allowed to pick from a certain number of free audio titles that also had a book, an ebook. So they had found my podcast novels, found my ebooks, and were basically learning English by reading my books. And so I have this market. I have a market in South Africa now. Never saw that coming. I'm probably more popular in South Africa than I am in my hometown, which go figure, right? But that's just the way the world works. You have to put it out there before you'll discover what strange thing is going to happen for your work. Who's going to connect with it? Who's going to take it and run with it? You never really know. And sometimes it takes a while to happen. So don't get too disappointed if it doesn't happen right away. I know how that feels. It's no fun. But there are ways to do it, to get it out there, even if it involves telling really terrible dragon jokes over and over and over again, which guilty.
you are good at telling bad jokes. If Don't take that the wrong way.
No, I take that as a compliment. When
That's our prerogative as dads. I don't know if you're a dad
I'm
or
not, I'm a
not,
cat dad, so I'll say close enough on that.
but yeah, that is our prerogative. I guess that is our prerogative as men approaching a certain age, even if we're not dads. I think dad jokes are don't require fatherhood actually.
I
But
can attest to that.
so your fantasy series is epic fantasy. What does that mean? What does that
It's
mean to you?
long. It's long. Don't expect a resolution of the problem in book two. And really, that it comes down to a deep love that I had of series like Game of Thrones, The Eye of the World, even the Dragonlance series. You can go back to Forgotten Realms. There's a lot of them that had the kind of extended arc. But at the same time, there was a problem with a number of those series, which is that some of them never got finished, and there was no resolution for the reader. I love Robert Jordan. I'm very thankful for Brandon Sanderson for finishing that series, but that was an example of a series that had dragged on for quite a long time, and really, as a reader, I wasn't feeling like satisfied. I was hooked. I wasn't satisfied. Same thing happened with Game of Thrones for me, and that's one of the reasons that in my series you'll notice that there are 12 books and it's four trilogies, and each trilogy tells a complete story. You can read the first trilogy and walk away. maybe not the best marketing strategy, but I wanted the readers to be satisfied. And yes, there's more storytelling, there's reason to go on, but I wanted to have endings. That has proven fruitful for me. And interestingly enough, sometimes people will pick up the last trilogy first. And then they'll contact me and go, it seems like there was a pretext to that. I'm like, yeah, your whole books
I am notorious for reading series out of order. You know,
must have been like knowing like all of my story and we go, wow, what it would be like to start here. But then again, that's one of the tricks of the storytelling too, right? Sometimes starting at the beginning is the worst place to start.
well, and you know, there sometimes it's like the cover just hits
Yeah.
or something piques my interest about a book and I don't actually discover until I like really pay attention that oh I'm suddenly in a series now.
Yeah.
And maybe I should go back and read the earlier books. One of the one of the examples that I lift up as being my platonic ideal of long series and how to handle them is Jim Butcher. He is really good at getting you into the whatever book you're reading, getting you into that book in a comfortable way so that if you haven't read the earlier books or if it's been a while since you've read the earlier books, you can find your way into the story without necessarily needing all of that.
Not an easy thing to
How,
pull off.
yeah, and I was just about to ask, like, how do you approach that? Is that something you've put a lot of thought into?
It is. I try to make it so that you could pick up any of the books and provide enough context within the narrative that I'm not doing an info dump.
Hmm.
That's a big part of the learning I did writing. Do I really need a prologue? Probably not. Is that prologue an info dump? Probably. If it is, probably destroy it and get the information out better through narrative, through storytelling, and through doing those things. But the later I got into the books, the less I did that, and people still pick them up and read them. And I don't know, maybe it just became a built-in thing that I was doing subconsciously because it was a priority for me at least early on. Yeah, it's definitely something. And I'm about to produce the 20th anniversary editions of the series. And one of the things I want to add is the story before and author's notes,
Mm.
some of the things that I could have done. And this is an interesting point I want to point out is that some of the most beloved things about my series were afterthoughts. The quotes
Mm.
at the beginning of every chapter are some of the highlights. If I go look at what people are quoting and highlighting in the books, it's usually those quotes at the beginning of the chapter. I just added them to add a little color and to be able to give a little insight into the characters in the world. And they just became something I got really good at. And
Mhm.
that's when Twitter came around 2009. I was getting on Twitter and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. I have no idea what to say. I don't want to say buy my book. Clearly, that's not a good strategy. So I started by
Right.
just posting those snippets from the beginning of every chapter and it went really well. But eventually I ran out of them. And I'm like, now what? And that was the day it just clicked. What if you shoved dragons into everyday sayings? That worked. And I'm not on Twitter anymore. I think I still have an account on there, but I was hoping it would sell and do something positive in the future, but it hasn't. But I've got 150,000 followers on that network, and my tweets were seen 6 billion times. Like, it had something. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that sold a lot of my books, but probably about 25% of them came from that. And I know that because when I stop, sales drop. I do it on different networks now. I'm on Threads now, and I do that sort of thing. But I realized that a lot of people were missing out on social media just because their content was not enjoyable. And so I was like, what would be a good formula? And my formula is random, out of context, and mildly amusing. That's it. Like it just
And
guard.
I I would go so far as to say even more than mildly amusing. But yeah, and it all gets back to I've talked about this with previous guests. It all gets back to just being yourself, letting whatever it is that's unique about you shine through. And like you said, just hawking your book with every post is not a good strategy. There are certainly exceptions but as a general rule, like
Yeah.
that's not
I kind of
people.
20, 90, 10, 80% other content, 20%, hey, I got a sale going on. Hey, did you know I had this book over here? Hey, thanks for the reviews, that sort of thing. And even then, doing it in a way that you're, like you said, you're being yourself, you're being human. I try to make connections with people by just being real. And, that has worked really well.
People forget, a lot of people forget the first word in social media is social,
Yeah.
and just being sociable and being and interacting with people, which I'm on multiple platforms too, just because I like to try different things and I'm a social media junkie. And I have had absolutely zero traction on Blue Sky.
Same here.
I try interacting and nothing. I don't have a lot of followers on Blue Sky, which is part of the problem. But yeah, it's like finding that tipping point to where you am I ever going to find that tipping point where I'm following enough people and they're following me
Yep.
that I'm going to get people interacting. But Threads has been tremendous for me. And it reminds me of Twitter back in the good old days.
Agreed. I miss Twitter days.
I miss
That was my
I even missed the gosh darn fail whale,
right.
which people are like, what is that? So when Twitter was young and glitchy, it would, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was a Douglas Adams reference or what, but they would have a whale pop up that was supported by the hummingbirds or whatever kind of birds that
We
were
say
the
it was just running
Twitter.
on Docker.
Yeah. And so that's the fail whale. But at least they did something amusing with their failure. So there's a lesson in there too, I
There
think.
is. You don't have to present yourself as a superhero because you're not.
Right?
At least I'm not.
So you've got this sprawling series, this epic fantasy. Some of it is it's contained into these smaller arcs. How much planning did you do on that end of things?
It's interesting because I spent 15 years thinking about the story before I ever started writing. So there was all that story planning. It was loose. I'm not a good outliner. I write code. And you'll laugh at this being a technology person. When I go to write a new novel, I'll create the book, I'll create approximately the number of chapters in it. And at the top of every one, I put comments. And I literally put either the slash or depending on what coding language I'm using at the time, I use the same commenting structure. And I throw them at the top of the chapters. This happens. I think that guy dies. That's about it. And then I burn and throw that away at will.
Mhm.
My writing process is to take a walk and get the scene to flow in my head like a movie. And as soon
Mhm.
as I've got that, I sit down and type like a madman. And just, I don't stop if I have a misspelled word. I don't stop for anything. Just get it out of my brain through the keyboard. That's it. And I consider myself a pantser, but I do at least have that generalized structure. But the funny part is, I didn't really know how the series ended. I knew the sentiment upon which it ended, but I did not know the
Okay.
actions upon which it ended. And it's been 12 years ago. I had some dental work done, and they put me under with gas. And I came out,
I love laughing gas.
yeah. So I came out, and of course, I don't remember this. And it wasn't until the next day I came back from the follow up, and they said, "Do you remember what you told us yesterday?" I'm like, "No." They said, "Oh, you said you figured out the ending of your series." I said, "But did I tell you what it was?" Because I couldn't remember it. It took a year later. It popped right back into my head, fully formed. I knew what it was. I knew where it came from. I remembered it then, but it took a full year before I remembered the ending of the series. So my advice to writers: if you ever get any dental work done and you come out, write it down. That's all I'm saying. Write it down. You'll
If
save.
you're ever under the influence of if you're ever under the influence of substances, keep a notebook nearby.
That's all I'm saying.
That's brilliant. So you have a new thing that you're working on. You're coming off of a long break, as you said, and you sent me three words: witches, scoundrels, and fools. And I'm already on board.
There you go. I
Um,
love it. Look,
what is, tell me about this. Tell me about this new project.
so Witches and Scoundrels and Fools is intended to be more standalone. It's not a standalone novel. It's at minimum a duology. Talk about why there in a second. But it's a historical fantasy, which is something I've wanted to try for a while. And the reason it's a
Hmm.
standalone project, you heard me say I need to write the final trilogy in my series, but I need a year.
Yeah.
I need a solid year with that's all I do to finish that. I can work on a single novel that I'm not taking into account a million words of history. I
Hmm.
just fly by the seat of my pants and write what's in my head and have a lot of fun doing it. And it's going to take me a while to edit it because it's going to be a very discombobulated draft. I wrote part of it on a plane to California. I wrote another part of it on a plane somewhere else. And I'm just taking the scenes out of my head that won't leave me alone. And I'm getting them in there. And then I'm going to have to create the glue that goes between them. But it's an idea of taking real historical events. I've always been a kind of a magic realism kind of guy anyway. So where magic exists in the world, but it's really just scientific stuff that people didn't understand yet, that sort of thing. That's very much my speed and my style. So it fit well. And I was like, oh, okay, I can go back to this is the first thing I'm writing in our own world, where I'm not in a different world and I can look at our history. So it's a very different process of planning and everything like that. But I'm really looking forward to it. And the reason I'm doing a duology is that I never want to have a book that doesn't have a marketing component to it.
Okay.
Right? If I have one book, it's very hard to market because on my trilogy, I can make the first book free and you read it and you go, gee, I like that. I got $5 worth out of that. I'm gonna buy book two. And then it's going to draw you through the series. So I'm doing a duology. So I have a first book that I can make free or low cost and flip back and forth and do those sorts of things. But that leads you to the main title. And I want the main title to stand alone, right? I want you to be able to just pick it up and not feel like, oh, I missed the beginning. But having that marketing component is one of the main things that I've learned. The authors that I've talked with who said, hey, I wrote a book and it's not performing, my first piece of advice is write something you can give away that has a picture of that at the end and says, click here to get to my other work. It's the best way
Yes.
I know how as a self publisher.
It's funny that's your approach because in my case, so I've got this character, Joe St. Clair, and he is my Sherlock Holmes, but it's set in Manhattan, 19th century, and it has magic,
Okay.
supernatural elements. And a lot of times, how I work, how my brain works, is if I get a new idea for a new character, setting, story, I'll write something short as a kind of proof of concept.
Yep.
And so with Esho St. Clair, I wrote these two, what I call case books. They're novelettes ish,
Yep.
long short stories, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And
Good
those
for
two
that.
stories, I put those two stories in an ebook and a print book. And the print book is like 90 pages. That's how, so the stories are roughly equally long, 45 pages each. Um, and then I wrote a novel and I used that casebook, the original casebook with the two stories, as the kind of lead in. And I'm like, if you like this, here's the novel.
Exactly.
I sell the print book. Actually, when I do in-person events, the print book sells like crazy because I can price it at a reasonable price point, and people they feel like they're getting something for that money. And if they like that, then I'm like, yeah, then you can buy the novel. I think I need to do some thinking along those lines with, because it's been a while since I've done a price adjustment on, I did a price increase on everything 6 months ago, I think,
Yep.
but I need to go and massage the ebook and have the first chapter of the novel at the end of it, like you were saying.
Yep.
I think that's a great idea. But the thing that makes them, to some other advice you've given, each one of these stories, each of the short ones and then the long one, they're all completely standalone. So if you picked up the novel and you didn't pick up the short book, then you're not missing anything. And because I approached it very much like the Arthur Conan Doyle stories. You know,
Yeah.
you don't have to read this, you don't have to read Sherlock's adventures in order.
Yeah.
Um, and they're all super self-contained. Yeah, there may be some references, like I'll reference things in the stories that I haven't written that story yet, but that gives me another, when I'm ready to sit down and write another of those stories, I'll just pick one of those references and write that. Um, so yeah, I got a piece of advice from a writer ages ago now, which was have something, especially again if you're doing, I don't know if you do very many in-person events,
It's been a
um,
while, but I loved them when I did.
have something on your table that you can sell, even if you're selling it at cost. Have something on your table that you can sell that's a physical product that you can put in somebody's hands for throwaway money.
Yeah.
$5, $10. I started with the Esho St. Clair casebook at I think $7 or $8. And then I recently increased it to 10. It sells just as well. But again, that's not when you, unfortunately, because I remember the days when you could buy a novel for $5.
Yeah.
$10 is in this market, in this crazy market that we exist in, is like nothing. It is something. Like I feel the pinch of $10 some days. But yeah, like when people are coming to a place to spend money, $10 is enough that they can take that risk.
Yeah,
Um,
that was one of the things I learned when you publish a trilogy and it's $20 plus. It's hard to get people to just bite. I'm gonna risk $20, and I don't know if I'm even gonna like it. That was a
yeah,
bad spot for me. And like early in my career, I realized that a reader could walk up to a shelf and see my book right next to somebody they already knew, same price. Who are they going to read? They're going to go to the person they already know. So I had to
yeah,
become the known commodity, and that was the free products, that was the audiobooks, that was all of those things. Didn't make me money, but it got me over the hump that somebody would go, "Oh yeah, I've read some of Brian's books; they were pretty good. Maybe I'll spend a couple bucks on this one and go ahead through the series." So it's a very different model than many other authors use. So there are other ways to do it, but that's the only way that's ever really consistently worked for me over time. And I do want to mention one thing because I said I change my prices periodically. Google Play being a very good market for me, they have a tool that when you go in, you can set time pricing. You can say for this month, it's this much, and then this month, it's this much. So you can literally
nice.
just go in and set it and forget it.
Mhm.
And it is noticeable. There's a one of the things I like to do is just study the retailers. That was one of my first things that I learned that made me successful was looking at the retailer. What do they do? How do they do it? How do you find books on there? What are people searching for on there? Who's showing up first and what are they doing that I'm not doing? Those were the things I started to realize. Like in my Google Play metadata, if I have a book about dragons, dragon ought to be in the title. One, SEO, your title.
Yes,
That's
clearly.
right there. Boy, I named some books some stupid stuff. Nobody in the world is ever going to search for Onan because they have no idea who it is or they wouldn't have thought to. But a dragon for Onan, oh yeah, that would eat that up. So one, SEO your title. Second, make sure that word is the first word of the tagline and the first word of the description and it's in bold. That right there will move you 3/4 of the way up the search queue for that particular term. I spent better part of a year as the number one response in audiobook and ebook if you typed in dragon. That gets me a lot of sales. I don't have to pay for any of that. And so, how did I figure out what people were searching for? I go to the retailer and I go up to the little search box and I start typing in epic, epic fantasy with dragons, epic fantasy. All of a sudden, these suggestions pop up. Those suggestions are what other people are searching for. So, you can start to get an idea of what people are looking for and you want to show up on those searches. So you have to do this in an ethical way. You have to do it in a strategic way that is both for the benefit of the reader and for the benefit of the algorithm. If you just try to do it for the algorithm, it's going to be a mess. So it's this nuanced thing where you go in and you say, okay, how can I tweak it so that the reader knows exactly what they need to know to get interested in my book, but that the algorithm knows what it's about and knows who should see it when they search for it. It's hard, but that's been my number one success for long term. Me not spending a bunch. I have $100 a month marketing budget. That is not much. Usually that means save
No.
money for 6 months and maybe you'll get a book bub.
Hmm.
At this point, I'm paying for Chirp. Chirp is probably my best promotional method right now. And for the longest time, their promotions were free and they just took a portion. Now they charge a little. I've had enough success with them that I don't mind paying the fee because I know I'll get it back.
Tell me about Chirp. I don't think I'm familiar
So Chirp
with that.
is an audiobook store that they have discounted books, and it's affiliated with, and forgive me because they all have been buying each other, right? So it started out, it was like Findaway Voices and BookBub. But then Findaway sold to Spotify, who sold it to Invoices. So I don't know where it lands at this point, but it was this thing that grew out of, I perceive it as having grown out of book. But they run these promos, the 99-cent audiobooks, free audiobooks. The free ones are getting there now. That's the one I paid for most recently, was Freebie Friday. If you can get to be Freebie Friday, you might move 10,000 free copies. And then out of those 10,000 free copies, the people who liked it might go on and spend $25 to buy the other individual books in the series. My other favorite marketing tool, box sets. Love box sets. So, yeah, it's a more affordable place. I turned my wife on to it because she was using Audible and Prime and listening to audiobooks, one or two a month. But she was burning through them. So we tried
Yeah,
Scribd, we tried some of these others, we tried Chirp, and it's just really nice that you can go at any time and find reasonably priced audiobooks.
nice. I've got a social media friend who is insane because he is starting his own author platform for audiobooks and ebooks. Um, I'm in the process of recording audio now for a short story collection that I've had out for quite a while, but I've never had an audiobook for it. I'm going to use that as my test float. I will link to that in the show notes,
Yeah,
but
that's brilliant.
yeah, I'll have to check Chirp out and see what that's all about. That sounds great because people love audiobooks. My wife is
Distribute
an audio
to an
fiend.
audio, which is wide distribution, what used to be Findaway. You can just select distribute to Chirp. It's super easy. The one thing I will say about
Nice.
Chirp is they're one of the retailers that does not take your pricing and price it the way you priced it. Or I should probably say I change my prices. They'll pick the price they like and stick with it. So no matter, I can go back and change my price. I've made some books free that are going to probably be permanently free on Chirp. That's fine. I don't really have a problem with that. It's the single ones. I sell mostly box sets. I use the single ones to sell the box sets. I like to tell people at the end of the single books, hey, there's a box set. Hey, if you really want, there's a 9-book box set for $100. Go grab that. Love it when people buy that. And yeah, one other thing I want to point out because it's just unusual is two of the books in my series were not written by me. They were plotted by me and another author, but I have
Okay.
authors who have written books in my series. And one, I'm really grateful that they did it. And two, it was just fascinating for me to see my characters will do what they want, but boy, when somebody else writes them, now they're really doing what they want. So there's two books of those 12 were written by other authors. And that's another thing is to work with other authors, partner up with other authors. There's a free steampunk anthology on Google that I'm one of 7 or 8 books in. And we all benefit from it. We all get traffic out of it. And I can't write enough books to satisfy my readers. So I never look at another writer as competition. We're just
Yeah.
other people in the same community that can help each other out. And so the other thing I do when I'm running out of things to say or I just don't have a dad joke at the moment is promote other writers. I don't do it as much as I used to because time wise, but I found it really effective to go on podcasts, talk to other writers, talk about the business. We used to do the Writers Coffee House in Asheville. To do those kinds of things ingrains it gets you out into the community and people will value that. I
Yes.
will say that there was one time I went to a convention and somebody drove 8 hours to see me, not because of my books, because of the dragon jokes. And I've had to really, I'm like, okay, I guess if that's how it's going to work, I'm fine with that. But sometimes
Clearly,
you become better known
l-
for the thing you're using to promote your books than you are for your books.
let me put a bug in your ear.
Yeah,
A dragon joke book.
I've been trying to figure out how to format that because my jokes, and they're really hard to land in person because they're meant to be text. They're and Twitter's where I refined it, right? So they're meant to be short, They're meant to
Mhm.
catch you off guard. You're probably going to be seeing politics and this, that, and the other. And then all of a sudden, right in the middle of it is this one line dragon joke that made you go, wait, what? So I've been trying to figure it out. And one of the things I thought about doing was a dragon joke a day calendar. I've tried to figure that out, and I have just not figured out how do I take 5 word jokes and turn them into a book. If you can figure that out, let me know, because I have been trying to figure that out for about 10 years.
I will definitely let you know what I come up with, and I'll expect like 5%. That's all I'm asking. 5%. So I really resonate with what you said about community and lifting up other authors. And obviously, that's one of the reasons why I do this show, because it makes me interact with other authors and now other
Yeah.
creators, other kinds of creators. But specifically, and this is a drum that I will beat and beat because I think it is so important. Find your community of writers somehow. Like it's going to look different for everybody, but one of the things that I've have built with some help from these friends of mine, one of the I said so I should say one of the things that we've built this group that I have is a we're calling it the Piedmont Scribblers Collective.
Nice.
And it's a group of 5 authors, including myself. And we go to events together, we cross promote each other, we listen when somebody has to kvetch about something, we're a shoulder to cry on. It's not a critique group, although it can be that. We can tap into that if we want to, but it's mainly like a support group.
Yeah.
And the best part of it, I think, other than just having these other writers to talk to when we have something to talk about, is going to those events together and leveraging our individual, we're like Voltron. We just leverage that collective energy and presence to, I've started planning events specifically for this group because events are getting expensive to do. Cons are expensive to do.
Yeah.
And so we're going to local retailers and local coffee shops and different things and having events. And so that is important. And the next thing I'm working on for us is a book bundle, like you were talking about.
The thing to do.
I'm trying to figure out the logistics of that and how I want to handle that, and whether it's going to be strictly for promotion or if it's going to be like profit sharing, how to work out the money, because that's always a crazy thing you have to think about
Yeah.
because we need money to buy things. But yeah, find that community somehow.
Yeah. Miss it. I used to do the Asheville Writers Coffee House with Beth Revis and Jake Bible and Jamie Mason, and it was always just a wonderful thing of sharing with people. And there's a bunch of writers out of Charlotte, and Beth Revis and Kay Hooper live in the same county as me, so I'm surrounded by people out there up here and doing really great, and I'm so proud of them. But yeah, getting out into the community can be a challenge, but if you can find the right way to do it, it's wonderful.
Yeah. And I'm in the process of trying to also leverage this group of writers that I've been interviewing for us to work together on things. And I'm going to be doing, this will probably be coming out in March. I'm going to do a roundtable episode of the podcast where I invite previous guests on and we're going to talk about a topic. And if that works well, then maybe every month I'll have 3 or 4 guests and we'll do a roundtable discussion instead of just interview format. Um, because I believe strongly in lifting each other up. And like you said, we're not competition. When you're done reading my books, I want you to go read Brian's books. When you're done reading Brian's books, I want you to go read Jake Bible's books.
Exactly. The mega
You know,
series, they're excellent.
yes.
Dead Mag right up there.
So yeah, community is so important because the writing process is, as so many people have, it's lonely and it's a struggle and you need somebody to talk to. And just having that community with other authors is important. And that's why I do this. That's why I've started that group. That's why I am putting energy into these kind of group projects because I think it's important.
I think it's smart. It's a good way to build trust, to get more exposure while elevating others. I don't know if you remember the show Patio Racket. Heather Rulo and Rhonda Carpenter, may she rest in peace,
Mhm.
started that to promote books that were being released on Audiobooks. And they invited me on after I released Call the Herald. And we had so much fun that they asked me if I would stay on and co-host it with them. And that was some of the most gratifying work that I did. It was totally beneficial to me, but I was helping somebody else elevate their own work. And a lot of the folks I interviewed were better than me, so they were still elevating me. But it's just a great way of doing it, of getting out there and not saying buy my book, but at the same time letting people get to know you. And a lot of it, I think, for me, when I was growing up, it was different. Nobody knew the authors were up on these pedestals. They were strangers. One of the things that I really enjoyed was being approachable. Was the fact that somebody could reach out on social media and say, "Hey Brian, I checked out this. What about that?" And I'd answer most of the time. That's something to me I think is a big change in dynamic that self-published and indie authors and even traditionally published, pretty much all writers in this day and age can take advantage of the fact that we're closer to the readers than we've ever been as writers.
I agree. And it shows like that and Dead Robot Society, which is still going on,
Yep.
and a lot of podcasts that existed back in the day that don't exist anymore. And I was like, okay, what do I tell my kids? Be the change that you want to see in the world.
Yep.
And yeah, I love hearing writers talk about their craft. I love talking with writers about their craft, and I hope the show inspires other people to start their own writing podcast. I'll subscribe. I will definitely
And tell
subscribe.
your kids that I also recommend be the weird you want to see in the world.
God, yes, my kids are so freaking strange, and I love it.
I wouldn't have
Um,
expected anything less.
I was hoping their mother would be something of a effect on them, but no, they're
No.
all just so freaking weird. Um, I love it. I love every second of it. Brian, it's been great talking to you. I want to respect your time, and we're hitting about the hour mark. Let people know where they can find you, and if you have a rough idea of when your new project is coming out, let us know that too.
So you can find me at brianrathbone.com. It is a really sad website. I need a new one. You don't have to.
Mhm.
You can find me at fantasy author Brian Rathbone on Threads. That's probably the best place to get me right now. I'm Brian at brianrathbone.com if you want to shoot me an email. Wizard, the book I'm working on now, which I can't even get the title out of my mouth. You have to get to that point you can say it like automatically by rote, which is Scoundrels and Fools. Hoping to have it done by the end of the year. I've got some contracts that I'm really overloaded with until June. And hoping from July through November, I'll get some serious writing and editing time in. And I'm probably going to narrate that one myself. So some narration time as well, which is at this point one of the most time consuming parts of the whole thing. Although at least you don't have to struggle as hard to edit audio as you used to. So I'm out there, I'm all over
Well,
the
God,
place. Happy to chat with folks, tell some dragon jokes, promote other people. Let's make the world a better place.
thank you.
Thank you.
So, if Appalachian folklore is your thing, dark woods, shapeshifters, and the kind of evil that feels way too close to home, I've got a recommendation. Where Dark Things Grow and Where Dark Things Rise are the Dark Things Duology by Andrew K. Clark. They're Southern Gothic horror novels set in the Appalachian Mountains, blending folklore and supernatural dread with sharp social commentary. These books follow teenagers who gain strange, dangerous powers and have to decide how far they're willing to go when religion, family, and violence collide. Think Old Gods of Appalachia style atmosphere meets character-driven horror. Both books are available now on ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Just search Where Dark Things Rise wherever you buy books.